And good morning. I love Miriam's story. In fact, I was going to share it with you, but that just goes to show the power of LinkedIn, right? I'm not going to talk too much about my background. I'll tell you bits and pieces about it as we move along. I'd like for this to be a conversation. And so I've got some slides that I think will start some conversation in a variety of different areas. So just to tell you a little bit, I am from Detroit. I am an electrical engineer from Michigan State. Go Green. I spent 20 years in the utility industry. And the way I wound up here in DC was in 1990. I came here to lobby on behalf of my company. I spent 4 years as a federal lobbyist. That was when lobbyists did not have a bad name. So, in the course of my work, when I turned 40, in fact, I started having, kind of like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life, that kind of stuff. And at the time, my company was kind of moving me around in different areas because they saw potential, right? And so they put me in different areas. And at some point, they were putting me in places I didn't want to be. And so then I said, well, what do I really want, right? And I decided that I loved the experience in Washington. I wanted to move back to Washington. So I took a year off. I went to the Kennedy School at Harvard. And fabulous opportunity, 45 countries represented in my class of 200. And as a result of that, it really gave me the confidence to do some of the work that we're going to talk about today. So, how many of you are familiar with the parable, the donkey and the whale? Oh, good. Okay. So, there's this donkey fell in a well. And of course, he's screaming and, horrible sounds. And it's in the well, so it's echoing really, really bad. So these two guys walk by, they see the donkey in the well, and they say, well, this could go on for days. Let's put him out of his misery. So they start shoveling dirt, thinking that they'll just kind of, bury the donkey, all the noise. So they start shoveling dirt into the well. And every time the dirt hit the donkey's back, he would just shake it off and step up. So they invite people. It's almost like a party. Everybody's trying to bury the donkey. And every time the dirt hit the donkey would just shake it off and step up. And eventually, the donkey shook off the dirt and walked out of the well. Right?
Right.
So the question is, what's your mindset about this job search? How many of you are excited about where you are right now? Okay, a few.
We're going, yes.
No, where you are right now, because there's nothing but now.
Amen.
Right? There's nothing else, just now.
Yeah.
And so, if you are looking at this in a joyful way as opportunity, then the universe will conspire with you and make it a joyful experience, right? But if you're looking at it as drudgery, you'll get more of that. So the first thing I would like to invite you to do is to decide what this looks like. Because the minute you think of it as, hey, I'm 40, I'm 50, whatever it is, and I'm about to do something that really lights me up. Right? And so the next thing is to decide what is the work. So a lot of times we approach it with, what have I always done? And I loved Michael, who said, I don't know that I really want to go back into a law firm that's high pressure and all that. What do I really want to do? And so this is your opportunity to take a big bite of the juiciest apple you can find, and figure out, what do I want to do? So when I coach this, I have always loved clothing. And in fact, my mom was a seamstress. So I've, sewn all my life, gone to fabric stores, When I would go into a retail establishment, man, my heart would start racing. So I said, maybe there's something to this. So I became an engineer because in the 70s, they were recruiting minorities who had some affinity to science and math, and grew up in a single parent home. We didn't have a whole lot of money, so my intention was to go to college, make some money. I got a scholarship to go to Michigan State, so of course that's what I'm going to do. But then, when I had this opportunity to start to think about, it's not me. Right? What is it that I really, really want to do? I said, I want to become an image consultant. So when I went to, while I was at Harvard, and you'll have an opportunity to answer this question, I hired a coach. The coach said, Marva, if you could do anything in the world, what would it be? So I started talking about this wearable art boutique that I would open in Old Town Alexandria, and it would not be open to the public. You could only, by invitation. I'm going on and on about this wearable art boutique. And so she said, why are you here at Harvard? And then all of a sudden, my voice dropped. There was no energy in it. So you can always tell what it is that you should be doing. And the question is, are you giving yourself permission to pursue it? So that's the first thing we need to address. Now, this is a friend, Satori Shakur. She's actually, I wrote 2 books, she's in both of them. She starts to tell her story. And I took the video out, because it's a 10-minute video, but I thought maybe we could spend that time just in conversation. But Satori has an interesting background. She's an actress. She was, if anybody remembers George Clinton, the Funkadelics, she was one of the brides of Funkenstein. She spent time in Toronto. She did Menopause the musical. But she found herself in the midst of depression after she lost her mother and her son the same year, within months of each other. And this was, I think, in maybe 2011. So she got really depressed, no work, she was on unemployment, and she one day kind of woke up and said, I really got to do something to change how things are going. So she pulled on her strength. Her strength was in storytelling. And what she decided to do, and I'm really shortening her story, but she set up 15 chairs in her sister's dining room, where she now lived, because she could no longer afford to stay in her loft, so she had to move into her sister's house. And at the time, she was in her 50s. So imagine that, moving into your sister's bedroom at 50. So she set up these 15 chairs in her sister's dining room, and she did this storytelling event. Well, they loved it. So then she got the courage to go out and find a venue in Detroit, a 45 chairs, small theater, sold tickets for $15, invited 4 other people to tell stories. It was fabulous. Then they started doing these pop-ups all over Detroit. And the Moth, I don't know, are you familiar with the Moth? The Moth found out about Satori, invited her to tour with them. So she started to build her confidence, to build, her ability to tell stories. And so now, from 15 chairs, every month she hosts an event at the Charles Wright African American Museum in Detroit, sellout crowd, every month, 300 people. So it's interesting how, when we start to think about, what is it that I do really well? Not only that, what lights me up? Most people would never think storytelling would be a way of making a living. And now she does it very well. She's taken this thing into different venues. She's had grants. She's, received rewards as well as awards. So fabulous, fabulous story. So the reason why I like to tell it is because no matter where you are right now, there's this opportunity to really pursue your passion. So I'd like for you to just team up into 2 groups of 2. And there are 2 questions that I want you to address. If you could do anything in the world without judgment, because we're the worst judges, first thing we're going to say is, that's a stupid idea. How can I make money doing that? Right? And my mother even said this to me. This is after I graduated from Harvard with a master's degree, and I told her I was going to be an image consultant. She didn't mean any disrespect, but she said, Marva, you mean you have a Harvard degree, and you're going to be putting lipstick on people? So she kind of broke it down to like the least common denominator of what I was doing, but
You enjoy it.
well, and frankly, she just didn't know. She was frightened for me because my family is not one of entrepreneurs, and I've always been kind of,
Different.
yeah, that one. She was asking, what is she doing now? But that's the question. First question: if you could do anything in the world without judgment or concern about how I'm going to make money, what would it be? So that's the first question. Second question is, how can you transform your skills, interests, and passion into your life's work? So you're going to tell your partner, question one, your partner is going to give you some ideas about question. Okay? All right? So we're going to take 10 minutes, so 5 minutes apiece. You don't have to so this is meant for you to do top of mind stuff, what comes up first. Don't think about it too much, but what really lights you up. And then your partner's going to tell you how you can make money. All right? Let's do 10 minutes. Find a partner. All right. Let me get just a couple of people. Anybody want to share? Okay. All right. Vincent, and then Noah, and I don't see him. No. Okay. So Vincent, what did you guys talk about?
We've talked about each other. This guy is really smart. Let me tell you. This guy he's a good listener. Very good. He hears the whole thing.
Okay. So what does he want to do? No constraints.
I think he would be very good at directing others.
But what did he say? What did you say you wanted to do without constraints?
Learn about things and re-explain them in simpler formats to people. It's sort of a concept. It's not a job.
Okay.
It's and that's sort of lumped into education, journalism. That kind of thing. The other thing I said is that there's two things. One of these I said, and the other one I didn't say. I just thought of it just now. Is that people have always said, "Well, you really like sports. Why don't you work in sports media?" And I've always that's never been something. I do like sports, and I've never been interested in that in a job. So I don't know. Maybe that's something I should be more open to.
And then Vincent, what suggestions did you give him based on his interests?
Well, I think it's not an area where there'd be a lot of judgment. If he was in a particular position, that sort of thing. He's also able to what's the word?
Well, you did tell me about an example from your own family of your sibling having similar qualities, and he was working in the insurance business, right? Which I had never thought of.
Okay. That's a tangible.
That was kind of an unexpected field or area.
Well, that's interesting. So maybe it's insurance, and you have a specific niche which might be sports people.
He loves sports,
athletes, and the like. All right, Noah and Malcolm.
Oh, so we weren't turned off. I was
okay. All right. Okay, so let's go Malcolm, and then Noah and Michael. All right.
So I was paired up with Beverly, and we were speaking about how she wants to get into recruiting. And so I asked her what areas of recruiting would you want to focus on. She said maybe marketing and higher ed. So we talked about how she would get into that field. I had suggested, since she said she had no experience in the field, maybe go in and start as an executive assistant, because they're not hiring at entry level as a recruiter without that background. So I said, get in there, try to get in that way. Said, I don't have the skills for an executive assistant. I said, then maybe you could go even lower and become a receptionist. It's just getting your foot in the door. she said that's probably an option. The other thing is, I said, you're gonna probably face what I face, where they look at you and you have higher degrees, and they're like, why do you wanna start at the bottom? And you just want an opportunity. So I said, well, you can try to get in as an intern. So that's one thing. But I also suggested, I've noticed there are a lot of women-owned businesses that are recruiting businesses. I said, link up with them directly with the owners and just explain your story. Because I think that's your best bet, especially that you did not come from that field, and then, you know, highlight that you have the marketing background, the higher ed, and so forth.
And one of the other things, you know, as we start to look at switching careers, look for associations. So there must be, and I would imagine,
John.
Tom
Yeah.
could give you some ideas, and perhaps you guys can do some networking.
Sure.
But there must be an association of recruitment professionals. I would join that association and go to their meetings, and that's where you'll find the opportunities to perhaps intern or even, you know, direct hire. Okay, and last group, Noah and Michael.
Yeah, so we actually started out a little bit late, but we kind of ran through some. So Michael
I did
is
most of the talk, unfortunately.
It was actually really interesting. So he was saying that he's coming from aviation, contract finance,
Right, in a legal,
in the legal background. So, and what he kind of takes from that is that he organizes, is able to kind of analyze and take in a lot of information, a lot of very complex deals, and work it into a granular form that's easily digestible to others. And what he has a passion for is play producing, and has actually in his kind of spare time
10 years ago.
been involved and worked with, or at least made connections in that field, and actually looked to buy the rights to certain plays to produce them. And he feels that with his ability to organize information and be able to kind of pitch his ideas and kind of pull the right strings to get the right people involved, that would be I think the transferable skills are there. One area is fundraising is obviously a great need, and making connections. I think those are the two areas that he really has to build. And so what I suggested, and I don't have any experience in this, but I did know of a friend who created I guess it was a play, it was kind of a play, something, a passion event that he created with some friends, and they put it together. And the way they ended up getting some of the actors was they connected with a professor at American University who I wanted to say was in the School of Fine Arts there, but was able to connect him with some of the talent, and at least, I was saying, at least make some connections there to kind of draw you into build your field of.
That's exciting. And so have you ever been to Woolly Mammoth? Okay. Just called Woolly Mammoth. It's a theater on
E Street.
E. Right off of 7th and D. But check them out because it's Northwest. It's very different types of plays, but my guess is that people are very approachable in terms of what they produce there. So something to think about. That as an overall exercise, did this not get you kind of thinking a little bit about what's possible? And so there's a book that I suggest. It's by Deepak Chopra, and it is the seven habits of spiritual success or something like that. I never remember. But anyway, when
Take off on the Kobe book.
Yes, take off on the Kobe book. And when I was in the gap, and this is what this is, right? It's in the gap. And in the gap is pure potentiality. Everything is possible. And I would listen to that tape every day. Because there's also your decision, fear in the gap. Because there's nothingness, right? And so if you can start to think of the gap as pure potentiality instead of the fear of what's not there, and start to think of it as what's possible, then you can start to really run with this. Okay. So let's talk about some how. How do we get what we want? LinkedIn, as you know, we've already talked about a little bit. It's the most amazing platform ever, in my opinion. First off, there's 630 million LinkedIn users. And most of them are from other countries. So for folks that are looking for international opportunities, most of them I think are India and yes, so there's some statistics about where it is, but the U.S. surprisingly is a very small percentage of LinkedIn users. 90 million are senior level influencers. 63 million are in decision-making positions, and 90% of recruiters use LinkedIn. So how many of you, I know if you're here, 40, although this is your first time, some of you, but I know 40 plus really advocates LinkedIn. How many of you have profiles on LinkedIn? How many of you do something with the profiles? I know Marion does.
What, can you say more about that?
Okay, so so there are a couple of things. We're going to spend some time on this. First of all, you really want to have, you don't want to have a title that's like, that's not descriptive, because you want people to be able to find you based on keywords in your title. Second thing is, people will always ask, I don't know these people. So when they ask, you know, will you connect with me? And they'll look at it, I don't know these people, I'm not connecting. I connect with anybody that A, has a strong profile, because I will visit your profile before I connect. And when I saw Miriam's, I said, Mary Ann or Mary M?
Marion, like Marion Anderson.
Okay, Marion. When I saw Marion's profile, you know, she spoke 5 languages, she's got all this, yeah, great connection, right? So I said, absolutely. The only people I don't connect with is if you don't have a picture and you don't have more than like 100 followers or connections. I won't connect with you. Because in those cases, I think it might be a troll, it might be who knows what. Otherwise, I'm going to connect. I have more than 2,000 followers, and this is a year old. Why is that important? Because connected to those 2,000 followers are millions of people.
Right.
And now, how do you use it? So one of the things that when I'm in a campaign, I haven't been in a campaign for a while, but when I was in a campaign mode, which meant I was looking for new clients, I would write articles. And I'd always put interesting pictures, Lucille Ball, right? And this was all about personal branding. So lessons learned from Lucille Ball about, you know, your personal brand. I had one on Dennis Rodman. I had one on Lady Gaga. I had, you know, so different kinds of articles that attract attention, always about the subject that you want to be known for. I would never talk about myself. I would always provide value-added information. And the whole idea is for people to understand that I'm building myself as a thought leader in a particular field. So as you start, yeah, Marion?
No, I was just going to add, you can either, because money is a big deal with a lot of us, or many of us, you can either join at the free level and you have access to a lot of things but not everything, or you can do graduated membership, $30 a month is, yeah, premium memberships, right, and
Yeah.
$30 a month, I believe that's the minimum, $29.99 a month is the lowest.
And I think you can do articles free with the free level, right?
Yeah.
So if you can write, you know, I strongly suggest that you start to write articles on LinkedIn. There's a statistic that says only 1 million users write articles. So I'm 1 out of 1 million out of 630 million people that use the article feature. And every time I write an article, I get a client. So that's why I stopped writing articles. I haven't written an article since 2016. Because I'll either get an inquiry about coaching, and I really don't coach individuals anymore. So it's powerful. The other thing that, and I'll talk about this a little later on, but ideally you're going to use LinkedIn to position yourself for whatever it is that you're looking to do. But always as a thought leader, never talk about yourself, always providing value-added information. LinkedIn has over 30 million companies with 20 million open job listings.
Lots of
Right.
job listings.
Lots of job listings.
Really.
Now the question is not just about, okay, here's a job listing, I'm going to just apply. You need to figure out, where does that company position itself? What kind of organizations does that company belong to? Who are the leaders? See, LinkedIn is not just a source, it is also a competitor analysis. If I were looking for a position in branding, I would go in, look for people, keyword search, DC area, branding, who comes up, what are their vitals? You know, what's their experience? Where do they hang out? What do they do? You know, all that kind of stuff. Use it as competitor analysis. Not so both ends of it. All right. DC Federal Contracts. It's a no-brainer, right? There are two ways to do this. So this is FBO.gov. Now it's a new name, and I forget the name of it. But if you go FBO.gov, it's something for 15 minutes? Mercy. Okay. So, two ways to use this. One is, if you have any interest in starting your own business, how can you then register as a company? Because there's a bunch of things that you need to do. You could go to the Small Business Administration, get an understanding of what's needed, start a company. And in fact, when I was in the Gap, that's exactly what I did. I started a company because I didn't know how long it was going to take me to get a job. I was told that it would take 12 to 18 months to get the type of position I wanted. So I started a company, Marva, Goldsmith and Associates. It's now over almost 20 years old. After I met a guy, this is the networking component. I went to my nephew's jazz recital back in 2002. He's now 31. And a friend from the company that I left, he's like, so Marva, what are you doing now? So I said, well, I'm an image consultant. And I had just taken a class, you know, done that kind of thing. He goes, oh, really? That's interesting. Well, I serve on the board of a welfare to work organization. Put me down for 10. I was like, 10 what? He said 10,000. I'm like, oh, that'll feed me for a couple of months, right? That was my first contract. $10,000. I did 4 workshops in Detroit. I was living here, but I wanted to get started. My second contract was with Right Management Consultants. I was an executive, took a buyout when I left Detroit. Right Management had an entrepreneurial kind of thing, and I took the class. And what we had to do was to do, I think, like a 15-minute workshop or demonstration of what it was that you were doing. So I did an image management workshop. And as a result, people really loved it. So when I moved to DC, I asked for recommendations. I marketed myself here with Right Management. So I would drive like 30 miles for like a $10 an hour position. But that was okay, because over time, it led to other networking opportunities, which eventually got me a $3,000 a month retainer, which moved into a $10,000 a month retainer. So it's kind of like, you know, don't think that if you're taking on menial work, it can't lead to something else. It's just a paid opportunity to demonstrate your skill set. And you never know who's going to benefit from that. So that's the first thing, is think about, in the meantime, starting your own position, because we have federal contracts. Look for federal contracts. The other thing is, that is so intimidating.
At least it's not a bell.
Yeah, right. Okay, 2 minutes. The other thing is, on here, they have like different ways of filtering information. You can look for the companies who just got contracts, because most of them do not have people to fill the positions. Now, my company in 2016, I started another business with a partner, and we do process improvement work. And so part of the work that I had been doing as a subcontractor was process improvement work for a federal client. So we eventually became the prime on the contract, and we had to hire some process improvement people. So I'm taking a lift to go visit the client. It's a 30-mile drive. And so the Lyft driver has a call comes in, and he goes, "I'm really sorry, I have to take this call." And so he was in the process of applying for a federal contract, and they needed some additional information because the bid was due like in a couple hours. So he's talking to the person, and then I hear him say this other person's name. And I know this name. I'm like, well, you know, there could be more, right? So then he says organizational development. And so I'm like, oh, that's definitely my friend, right? So then he says organizational effectiveness, and he's got all the right buzzwords. And I'm like, this is the guy I need to hire. So after he hands up, I interviewed him all the way out to, right? So it was an interview in the lift. I hired him. He's been working for me for 2 years. And we're not talking $30 an hour jobs. Okay.
Can I give you a ride then?
So my point is that there are two ways to look at this, right? Start your own business, and then look for people who have new contracts that are in your keyword search, because they're looking for people to fill those positions.
What was that website again?
So if you put in FBO, so it used to be FedBizOps.gov. Then it became FBO.gov, but now it's something else. But if you put in FBO.gov, it'll pull it up.
Okay, thank you.
All right, before I get to 5 minutes. How are you positioning yourself? I always say stand in the way of opportunity. Let an opportunity knock you down. Sometimes we just have to open our eyes and see that it is an opportunity. Speaking opportunities. If you speak on a subject, you've been working on something for, the way I started my other business, the image management business, I would look for conferences. So I used to speak at the Federal Women's Business, Federal Women's Training or something like that, Blacks in Government. So there were a variety, SHRM, I've spoken in SHRM. So look for places, they're always looking for speakers. And then so they usually don't pay you, but use the evaluations as collateral. So when I speak, then I would take those evaluations and I would use them for the next opportunity or to get my foot in the door in one of their firms. I would ask questions on the evaluation and have them check off, I'm interested in you coming to my company to train on this topic. So let them tell you yes before you have to go knock down the door, because that gives you a warm lead. Okay, volunteer. When you volunteer, don't just volunteer anywhere. Volunteer in a way that you can demonstrate your skill set. Teaching. Teaching is also an opportunity, especially in those community colleges, those environments. One of my contracts came out of teaching a workshop for Johns Hopkins University. Now, when you look at places like that, Johns Hopkins University, places where you have people coming in after work to take classes, if they like what you're doing, they'll take you to their organization. So I, as a result of teaching a class for Johns Hopkins, I got a contract to work for AARP for probably about 4 or 5 years. And it was really a great opportunity. Internet radio, blogs, YouTube blogs, all those kinds of things. Conferences, be a conference facilitator. If there's a role for you to play where you can demonstrate your skill set, do that. Don't just attend the conference. Be a part of the infrastructure. Do you own your name.com? So I've owned MarvaGoldsmith.com for 20 years. And so you want to think about, especially if you have a unique name, get the URL. And you can do You know, you can do all kinds of great things. Now, I will provide my slides, which I normally don't do, but I will provide my slides so that you can get some of this basic information off of it, because I know I'm going to do some speed talking because I only have about 4 minutes left. All right. Google your name. What comes up? So when I mentioned that I do a campaign, if I was looking for clients, I would, as an example, if I were doing a campaign right now, I would have issued a press release to say I was speaking here, and I would have talked about the organization and all that. As a result of putting press releases out, you know, I would have like pages of information about me online. This is in Spanish. I had no idea what it said. I had to put it through a translator to make sure they were talking about me. But you can see AARP, right? You can see my books, that kind of thing. I show up on people's websites because it's value-added content, not about me, always about value add. So think about, you know, how you might be able to utilize press releases, LinkedIn articles, things of that nature to make sure that when a recruiter, if you're looking for a recruiter or someone that wants to hire you, when they Google your name, something shows up. Because that's going to make a huge difference between you and the competition.
Something positive.
Something positive. If there's something negative on there, then you really need to start writing articles, because that pushes down whatever's negative so that the good stuff shows up in the first 2 or 3 pages. So as a result, when you start to look at a brand strategy, first you need to determine what it is I want to be known for. Writing a book is just an amazing large business card, because what it does is it sets you up as a thought leader, and especially if there is value-added content in the book. Get visibility. We talked about some of those things. LinkedIn is a viral network. Identify the other thing that I did when I wrote the book. I asked questions. So I said, does anybody know some different places that I could either sell my book or speak at conferences other than AARP, because I figured everybody say AARP. I got like 30 responses, and as a result, you know, a couple of radio interviews and conferences and things of that nature. And in addition to that, when I first published the first book, AARP bought 1,500 copies, and I spoke for 2 years in a row at their national conference. So as you start to think about, you know, this opportunity, what it is it's just like really getting engaged in different ways to promote not just yourself as a potential employee, but yourself as a brand. Because now that's what people hire. They hire brands. And if we're thinking about ourselves as a brand, how do I go to market? How do I get visibility? All those kinds of things, that's what you need to be thinking about. And then you need to be consistent. And as a result, people will seek you out. They will look for you to hire you. And then you might have, over time, decide, I don't need a job. That's what happened to me. I'm like, I don't need a job. Right? And so I've been playing for 20 years now. Right? And so you really just need to think about, you know, how do I create a strategy that's going to get me noticed? Find a need and fill it. Develop a niche and grow rich. Keep going. Okay. So when we start thinking about this concept of personal branding and brand building, who are your brand builders? Who are the people that need to know about what you're doing and what you want to do? You know, so we threw out a couple of ideas as an example for Michael. You know, go to Woolly Mammoth. You know, for people that they're recruiting, go to, you know, those kinds of things. Find people who can promote you as a brand. What have you done for them lately? They need to understand, and they need to also benefit from your skill set. So in your brand builders, you might even volunteer to do some work for them. What's giving them a headache? You know, it's never going to be something that you give away. It's going to be something that brings some value back to you in return. And you can help them by demonstrating your skill set. Okay. What's your next pet rock? Okay, so, right? Funny, not funny. I mean, think about the pet rock. What was it? It was a rock. And how much money did the pet rock make? So don't think that there's no stupid ideas. And so
there's ways to waste money.
Well, right, for other people. But So this is my next pet rock. And just, quick fast forward, I'm now at the point where I'm looking for work that's not energy intensive. Because I'm 61 and it's almost time to retire.
You a baby.
Got about 5 more years. But what do I want to do for work? I want to create opportunities and adventures for people like me to just enjoy. And so that's my next possibility. Okay, take action is the last thing I want to do. There's a video, and Ron, you might have to press the start. Oh, good.
That's not good.
Already late.
Somebody will come.
Oh my God.
Sorry. Somebody! Hello! There are 2 people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Hello?
Well, there's not enough left to do.
Can you walk? That feels
Hey, don't worry about it. I'll fix it in a second. He said he can fix it. All right. That's more like it. He says he can fix it.
All right.
Oh, no.
Okay, you didn't hit the pause. So the question is, are you stuck on an escalator? And in what ways are you stuck? And not to get biblical on you, but it's just pick up your bed and walk, right? And so whenever you start to feel like, and it happens to everybody. It happened to me when I first started my business, because I was so used to business always coming to me, problems coming on my desk, that I just sat there literally looking at the phone like, ring phone, So in what ways are you stuck? And last thing, I would invite you to link in with me. I also have books, and they're available for $5 a piece today. If you don't know what you're really good at, I suggest a 360 brand assessment. It's a tool where you can invite people to tell you what you're good at. And when I send the slides, I'll put the URL for that. Well, thank you so much for